Windows finals.
Okay, so this, first of all, my first confession about this workshop is that it's a sort of flaky anarchist workshop, really, with a load of slides, and it may not be coherent, so I will warn you. And there isn't really a conclusion either. So I just wanted to cover just kind of like the whole internet thing and what it all means, and what's going on with it. It's such a big sort of topic. And a while ago, after the Edward Snowden revelations, I had a workshop that I did a few things about PRISM and what all that was all about. So what I've done is I've sort of bastardised that by cutting most of the slides out and then whacking a load of other random slides at the end of it. So this is, we're going to see if this sort of fits together. So here we go. So bear with me on that. So who here is aware of what happened with Snowden and PRISM to start off with? Who's kind of, is sort of, yeah, okay. So this is going to be a bit quick, and hopefully we can get through this and sort of generate maybe a discussion, is what I'm hoping. I have got a lot of slides, but I'll try and go through them quickly. So this is my plan. I'm going to just talk about Edward Snowden and PRISM and what happened. I'm then going to have a look at, you know, the wider implications of that, and then what tools are available. Just cover off a few little tools, not going into any great depth on them. I'm going to have a look at, like, some people here are involved in activist-run hosting providers for internet services, and I just wanted to have a look at a sort of comparison between those and also versus the commercial providers. And what are some of the benefits and issues of that? Because, you know, there's pros and cons to it. And then I want to look at the kind of global situation of internet in a kind of sort of cyber war size global theatre sort of setting. And then I'm going to fail to come to any conclusion at all about it. So. Okay, so I'm going to try not to read off the slides as well. So, you know, this was during the last, it happened at the last Barncamp in 2013. Well, it was on, literally. The Edward Snowden, security contractor working for the NSA, leaked all this information to the Guardian and Washington Post, and saying that the US were consuming and monitoring all this data, all people's data on the internet, and that a lot of companies, through either their own voluntary, because they were happy to do so, or because they're effectively giving an ultimatum to do so, were actively collaborating, feeding this information in, as if there were large pipes from some of these providers straight into the NSA's system so they could monitor these communications. So this is this is one of the slides that was released by Edward Snowden, or two of them actually. I can't pretend to understand it. I don't even know, are they real? I mean, they're not very well, they're not very good slides, are they really? But, hey? There's some of the better ones. Anyway, so you can see that, the main thing to look at, I don't understand what scissors and blah, 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 but you're effectively, on the left-hand side, you can see that we've got our data providers, Yahoo, Google, etc., and they're feeding a fat pipe of data into this system so they can process it, analyse it, and do stuff with it. And so the kind of shocking thing about that is not, for me really, is not that people were being spied on. It's like it's on such a big scale, and the commercial companies were actively involved in doing that. And you can see on the sort of down the bottom in the middle that they've got like little different codes for each provider. So, you know, Microsoft is P1 and Yahoo's P. That's the bit I'm not sure I believe this is true. And then the type of traffic, email or VoIP messages and all this kind of thing. So that was a bit shocking, really. So the ramifications for us were that, for us, say, as British citizens or non-US citizens, is due to the US laws. In theory, because it's done in the US and we don't come under that legislation, we could be actively monitored by these people, by the NSA. So, you know, that kind of affected us quite a lot. And we also know, what it did tell us was that actually, although people might suspect that governments do this, we actively know that they are doing it and they will go to these lengths to do it. And so they want to do it. And, you know, I can understand probably why they want to do it, really, to be honest. If you want to manage a state, then you probably want to know what people are up to. Also, you know, what did I put? We know that foreign governments will break their own constitutional privacy laws and also the laws of other countries. Yeah, I suppose that's true, because it might be against the law in another country, but they're actively spying on their citizens and breaking the privacy laws that those citizens are in those states. So, it's a while ago. And so the thing is, there's lots of other systems as well. So it's not just PRISM, and this is a little out of date. And there's other things going on at the moment. There's all sorts of communications spying systems that have been running for a long time. So Tempora, there's a picture of some Tempora up in the top right, run by GCHQ, and so that's our own country doing that. And the other thing was that the British GCHQ and the NSA were collaborating and sharing the data. So that's good, because the NSA can spy on us and then share that data with GCHQ, and vice versa. GCHQ can spy on American citizens and share that data without breaking their privacy laws, effectively. So they're actively doing that. And then the thing with Tempora is, you know, also they're compelling the providers to do it by law, so they don't really have much ability to not collaborate, because effectively they're saying, right, you either do this or you're not in business, basically. So. And then there's all these other things going on. Echelon, which is a Five Eyes, which is between the US and Britain and New Zealand and Australia and someone else, Canada, and all these other ones. French-Elon, I'm sure they made that up in France. The gold, yeah, Français-Elon. SORM in Russia. Yeah, anyway, all these different. Everyone's doing it. That's the thing. Like, everyone's doing it. And there's also constantly. I mean, this is a couple of years ago, but as we know in this country with things like Reaper, they're constantly trying to pass new legislation to give more snooping powers. And as anyone who's involved in the open rights group will... Anyone from the open rights group here? Sort of, yeah. So constantly there's a fight back against the privacy, a state wanting to be able to have the right to intercept certain communications for sometimes legitimate reasons, sometimes not legitimate reasons, and then the desire for privacy. So that's constantly going on, as we know. And there's constantly new laws being passed in different states and then thrown out, and there's quite a tug of war going on with it at the moment. So, Panopticon. So this was an idea for a prison. I'm sure, who's heard of this? Yeah, okay. So it's an idea for a prison, and the idea is that you can't see. The overseer can't be seen, so you don't know whether you're being watched or not. And so the idea is you don't do anything wrong because you might be being watched, but you can't tell you're being watched. So the idea of so really for me, the prism, the idea that things like prism exist and things like tempora exist, means that we think we're being monitored all the time, which sort of plays into that idea, which, generates, that can change the way we behave and treat the internet. And that causes people to start using encryption and other things, or perhaps even stop using it for communications. So it has a kind of negative effect on us because it creates that fear that we're being watched. So what do we do? So what can we do? Okay, so I mean, we've got a load of tools available to us that some of you may know, some of you may not know, and these are just a few examples. So we can use HTTPS, Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure, someone wants to write that up. And that just encrypts your connection to a website, as I'm sure you know. Most people, things like, initially like online banking and stuff, that's generally HTTPS, eBay, Amazon, Facebook now. Most sites actually now use HTTPS, and I think Google even ranks sites that use HTTPS higher than ones that don't. And the idea of that is your connection's encrypted, so between you and wherever you're looking at, anybody looking from outside of that, seeing what traffic's going to pass, can't tell what that traffic is. So if you're ever putting your details into the web, you should always use HTTPS if you can.
It's a bit of a joke.
It's a bit of a joke.
Collected at the other end anyway.
Yes, of course. I mean, it's not secret if you're using Gmail and HTTPS, then it can be monitored. So, yeah.
With HTTPS, you can't see what page you're going to on the site. So now with VPN, it only allows you to access by HTTPS. That means that a government can't see what page on HTTP you're looking at. So that's important as well.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. Yeah. So people can't see what you're looking at.
They can see what site you're looking at.
They can see the site, but that's what page you're looking at on the site.
So we can use encrypted connections. So we can take a connection to the internet one way or another and have that encrypted. And so again, someone can see that you maybe have a connection, but you can't see what's actually going on in the connection. So there's something called VPN, Virtual Private Network, which is basically your own little route across the internet, and that little route you've got is encrypted, and so anyone looking out can't see what you're doing. They're commonly used quite often for people, say, in a jurisdiction where their government is stopping them accessing certain sites to be able to access them, because it enables them to connect outside of the country and then encrypt their connection, and all their traffic can be routed through this connection. It enables them to do that and have some anonymity. I can't say that word. Anyway, Tor, which we'll look at in a minute, the onion router, which I'm sure, who's used Tor at all? Has anyone? Okay, it's basically a really slow web browser. Anyway, hey? It's got better, yeah, okay. We'll come back to Tor in a minute. SSH is a command line tool for getting into servers. You can also use it for uploading files and downloading files. Again, it gives you an encrypted tunnel. So again, you can see that someone's made the connection to such and such a place, but you can't see what's going on. Now, as a systems administrator, say, or a responsible person running internet services and stuff, I always want to do that kind of thing because I want to keep my traffic to my server private from hackers. So that's a use. And GPG, which is secure encrypted email. Again, with that, you can see who someone's emailing, but you can't see what the content of the message are. So it gives you privacy. And I mean, I use it a lot with other sysadmins to send passwords and server information about, so it's really good for that. But I could use it to, and with Charlie to organise going to the pub, generally. But you could use it to keep your messages secure. The only thing is that you can still tell, it doesn't protect you, it's not anonymous, and it doesn't protect you from people mapping that and saying, well, these people are communicating with each other. So it just hides what you're doing. And there are anonymising email services which I haven't covered. Can anybody name anything? No? Hey? 10-minute mail. So there are kind of anonymising mail services, email services, so you can have a kind of, effectively a sort of temporary address that people can't track.
Is that the same as Jetable?
You can use activist hosting services. There's some people from No Flag here.
Hi.
Ooh. There's people from OX4 here, maybe. Yeah. There, I think from Activix, for example, Network 23. Rise Up, obviously, is well known. So you can use those services. Those people are generally interested in your privacy, so they will uphold that. And we could just also be more aware of how we communicate, because that's an important thing, actually, is that one of the things I want to cover here is that we don't just trust. We don't just take all this new communications technology. You know, as humans, we've got a tendency to go, brilliant new technology, let's just use it. And then we just use it madly and then think, oh my God, it's got loads of social and political implications of using this technology and everything. So I think we need to be more aware of what we're trying to communicate and what we're using the technology for, whether we need to use it at all, because it might be easier not to use it. Maybe you don't need encrypted email because you can just go down the pub and talk to the people you want to talk to. You know, so I've talked through them. I'm not going to go through how this works because it's too much, but effectively, yeah, there you go. Effectively, what it's saying is that the two guys on the left and right, they're communicating, and they can see what they're doing, but the people in the middle who are trying to listen in, the spies, or the government, can't. It's all gobbledygook to them, so that helps them. GPG, again, it's I write an email message, I encrypt it, and I encrypt it in such a way that only the recipient can unencrypt it, and then anybody that looks in the middle, it's gobbledygook. So, and Tor. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about Tor. So the idea of Tor, and the thing about this project is it came from the American military, which is kind of odd in a way. But of course the American military wanted to develop some way of allowing them to communicate in hostile environments effectively and anonymise what they were doing in their communications, and also aid dissidents in other states in this purpose. So they wrote this tool. Now, of course, what happens is lots of people use it for illegally trading diamonds and paedophile rings, as well as activism and all sorts of things. So once these tools are released into the wild, then anyone uses them for whatever purpose they get used for, which is part of the kind of problem, I think, really. Anyway, Tor, which hopefully I could just quickly demonstrate. Right, here we go. Oh, bollocks, bloody Mac crap. Oh, God. What's it like in there? It's just... Right, what do I do?
While you're doing that, I mentioned the fact
Yeah,
you
go on.
mentioned it, you went over the Panopticon prison as if it was theoretical, but they built them in the Netherlands, and there's still several running.
Yeah, there's one Cuba that's quite faithful fusion of design, and it's got this flint in the middle for the super tank, whatever. And there's quite a number of Victorian prisons that are based on this, the Hawkins folks.
But yeah, Arnhem, Breda, it's 3 or 4 of them still in operation. They find that they find for some reason in those prisons the prisoners tend to be more estranged from the guards than in ordinary prisons. Who would have thought of it?
Yeah, thank you. I didn't mean to say it was theoretical. Yeah. So, here we go. So basically, Tor browser, which is you can get off. You can get here. You go to the Tor project website. You can download it. There's a package for Linux. There's a package for Windows, and it's basically Firefox wrapped up with all the software. So you just run it, and you don't really have to do anything. You used to have to do lots of things, it was quite complicated, but they packaged it up to make it simple for us now. So if I can, the basic idea of this, I'm going to put the microphone down a sec. So, the basic idea of this is, if you can see from this diagram here, when you join the Tor network, you join one of lots and lots of other computers connected to the Tor network. And when you go and visit a website, rather than going directly to the website, and hence giving you traceability about which computer it was that went to that website, where that person came from, it routes it through random paths through this network of many computers and out the other end. And so therefore, it's very difficult to track where the originator is of that connection. So, if for example, this is just Chrome, so this I'm looking at it. So when you connect to a web server that hosts a website, you give away lots of information about your computer. So, for example, you see that at the top, it says, I'm connecting from host 92, blah, 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 blah. That effectively identifies this as Highbury Farm, and that is their router that's sat in the farmhouse. The IP address also does that. And also, you can see that user agent string. They can be quite unique. That's basically the software signature of my web browser. So, it would probably be quite easy to map, if I was doing something nefarious here, you could probably quite easily work out it was me. Basically working out it was here, and probably I'm the only one with a computer that might have that exact set of browser versions. So you're giving quite a lot of information away. So if I visit the same website having fired up the Tor browser, it wants to update itself, but I'm not going to. There you go. So you can you see the difference? So there, it's masked my IP address, so you can't trace that back to here anymore. It's anonymized my bliss, effectively. So it's a much less specific version of the web browser. So that's very useful for all sorts of applications. Some of them are, for example, if you're in a country, say you're in China, and you want to get to a website that's about, what's wrong with the Chinese government, that would be blocked by the Chinese government, but you can get to it using this. So it's very useful for people to get to resources that their governments are stopping them to get to. It would be useful for me, say, what I wanted to do was set up an anonymous Google account to do some stuff on, send a few email messages. I could use this. It doesn't tie me to that Gmail account for those purposes. So that's Tor. So it's easy to use. The only thing is, because it routes through all those different computers, it's kind of slow compared to. So your experience on the web is slow, but that's the price of more privacy. So. Right, here we go. So, this is with Tor. This is where we need Alan, really, because he wrote a paper on this. So, there have been people saying it can be poisoned, so you can put fake nodes on there and try and sniff traffic as it comes through. Alan, that will be here at some point, I think later or tomorrow, he knows a lot about that, so he'll be a good person to talk to about that. I'd be interested in talking to him about that. So there is some breaches. So, for example, if I was say I'm a state, then I could be a Tor node. So then I could be sort of looking at what's going past my node and sniffing the traffic. I might not be able to tell where it came from, but I can tell where it's going and what's in it. So, and obviously, people are using it for unsavoury purposes as well as legitimate political purposes as well, which is, you know, when we see those articles in the media, in the press about how bad Tor is because the dark net and all these bad people are using it for bad things and we should shut it down and have legislation, that's the bad side of it, because that is true and that gives people, the moral majority and governments, good reasons to try and shut it down and stop it using. So we, you know, there's nothing we can do about that, but...
Just got a quick question.
Yeah.
It's a little bit nerdy, but it's also a chance to... So do they use animals or humans to sniff the traffic?
Humans. Yeah.
No,
Sweatshops.
Just wondering, like, I hear about traffic sniffing, but I don't know what it really is.
No, did I say traffic sniffing?
Yeah.
Did I? I'm really sorry about that. Oh no. You want me to say what it is?
I guess in a nutshell.
Okay, so two computers are communicating and you've got data that's flying around.
Like dogs,
Hey?
when they greet each other.
You've got a lot of data flying around, all these different cables and devices around the internet between you and the other person you're communicating with, and that's traffic. And then you've got people that intercept that data and harvest it and have a look at it, and they're sniffers. And so traffic sniffing is intercepting internet data, someone else's internet data. Is that all right? So now I'm just going to have a look at something called Tails, which is, so we've seen the Tor browser, there's another tool called Tails, which is, you can basically download it, stick it on, say, a USB stick or CD or something, boot off it, and it gives you an anonymised whole environment. It's a Linux environment with a load of tools, Tor browser already installed, and so you could, for example, use someone else's computer and do something you wanted to keep anonymous or whatever, and have all those tools ready and set it up. You can also, what I'll demonstrate at the moment is, I'm using a piece of software called VirtualBox. And what VirtualBox does is, it emulates a computer, so you can have a computer in a computer, basically. It's called a virtual machine. And so I'm going to emulate this and just show you what Tails looks like when it boots up. Hello?
Yeah, maybe you're going to answer it, but you just said emulates a computer. I can't imagine what that purpose would be for, or...
Okay, yeah, no, absolutely. It's used widely on a lot of servers, so you've got a big piece of hardware, lots of RAM, lots of disks, random access memory, and you can divide it up and run multiple virtual, what are called virtual machines. So effectively it's a computer, it behaves like a computer. I'm not explaining this, am I? Oh well. Have I explained it or not really? No. Okay, let me show you. Let me try and show you. So basically a computer's the hardware, yeah? And then you have a thing called an operating system, which could be like Windows or MacOS or Linux, and that runs on the hardware. So what this does is it pretends it's a piece of software that tricks these operating systems to think they're running natively on the hardware, and so it's the hardware implemented in software. Is that better?
Yeah.
Good, okay. So that's what I'm going to use to do this, which saves me rebooting my laptop. And it's also a way of doing this. I just download, all I did was I downloaded Tails. And I can show anybody in more detail after this, but I won't do this now because it's too indeed how to set it up, basically. You can download VirtualBox, you can download Tails, and you can just set VirtualBox to fire up directly from the download of Tails and run. So I'm going to start it. Oh, bollocks. Hold on a sec. Sorry. I don't know. Hopeless, isn't it? That was the darknet, yeah. Here we go. Right, okay. So here's this file here is what I just downloaded off Tails' website. All I did was download it and saved it. So I'm going to set this up to use it. So hopefully this time. So it pretends to be a computer and starts off from this Tails software, and that boots up. So you see it's behaving like it were its own computer here.
Sounds like a kettle.
It's amazing, isn't it? I don't know. I know, and it threw it as well. It's like, you know. This looks like it's based on CentOS to me because of this loading bar, but you know. So exciting, isn't it? Okay, so here we go. There we go. So I'm gonna select some more options. The one I like is you can make it look like Windows 8. Don't know why would you want to do that. The idea is say you went into an internet cafe and you kind of secretly booted this up because you wanted to be anonymous. Most internet cafes run Windows; they don't run Linux systems. So rather than look suspicious, if someone looks over your shoulder, it looks like a Windows 8 desktop. That's the idea. How useful that is, I don't know. You could choose to set a password and password protect this session. The session's destroyed at the end of it. I'm not going to bother doing that. And it should pretty much automatically set itself up. I mean, there's more settings for the network if it's more complicated than that. But hopefully in most places you should have a router that will make it work for you. There we go. So it now, I'll take it off full screen. So now well, I mean, I'm not running it full screen now, but now you can see it looks like Windows 8. It's amazing, isn't it? And you can see it comes with loads of tools. You've got LibreOffice for, you know, free Office stuff. It's got a few music players and all this kind of thing. So it's got some nice stuff. It's got GIMP to edit. You can view PDFs and that sort of thing. And then for example, we've got the Tor browser. Built into it. What in Tails? Nothing. Yeah, it just worked. And that's it really. And so you've just got this little version in a box of all of this. So rather than having to install all the software yourself, or if you're on someone else's computer, you can boot this up. One of the things it allows you to do, there's tools in here, for example, to create an encrypted drive. So for example, you could have two USB sticks, one with Tails on it, one with your data encrypted, and then any computer that you can manage to boot off this Tails stick, you've then got your encrypted data there. So if anybody sort of got hold of that, it would be useless to most people. So personally, I don't use it because I haven't found a need to, but I can see that for certain people it would be very useful.
Is it worth mentioning there are some halfway houses like portable apps?
Yeah, there are like portable apps, isn't there? There are, yeah.
You can also run up a USB stick.
And run under Windows and various things like that, don't they? So, yes.
Well, all the information sits on the stick, so that's what I use at work.
Yeah, it can be kind of.
So you just need to remember to take the stick home with you at the end of the day, but it doesn't leave you. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, you could run PGP within the email client if you wanted to go that way, and then if the stick fell into the wrong hand and all your email was encrypted, because you know you can just download.
So, I'm up for talking more about Tails outside of this, because otherwise it's a whole thing, but
If you were using someone else's computer,
yeah.
would you have to download VirtualBox?
I'm just using VirtualBox to demonstrate it. You could boot off the USB stick. You know, normally when you turn a computer on, there'll be I think it's F8 or something, where it'll say when it boots up, press a key to boot off it. And there's a key sequence on the Apple. I can't remember what it is. Hey? Hold down the Alt key, and then you get a little menu, and you just select the stick. So I'm just using VirtualBox as demonstrating. You could do that. So, for example, if I wanted to use my computer as normal, but then have an anonymised area. So I've got my day job, right? So I've got my day job, and then I've got my kind of activisty thing that I do over here, and I want to keep them separate. I can have that booting up. I can have my little encrypted stick or whatever, and just boot it up from that and do only that stuff in there and not my work stuff, and just keep the two things separate if I wanted. So say it's a company laptop, for example, that would enable me to do that. Hey? No.
Because the machines can't make the base machine. They can see that you've got a connection going out from VirtualBox because that's going through the base operating system network.
Yes, it would be, yeah. It would, yeah, of course.
So it's not still got a trace there.
But not if you boot off it directly.
Not if you boot off it directly, yeah. I mean, you could still see the traffic going out from your computer, but you wouldn't be able to see where it came from beyond what you're immediately connected to.
It could see if you were being recorded. But, yeah.
So it's
But you just use it to say.
So I'm going to shut this down. It's going to wipe its memory as well.
You've spoken about IP addresses and user agent strings, how they can be used to identify you. Can you also maybe briefly say something about MAC addresses, because they also can be used to identify people's traffic, right?
Mm-hmm. Can someone explain that at all, or no? Okay. Yeah.
A MAC address is a unique numeric address that every electric device that's going to be able to connect to the internet has, and each one is unique, so your computer will have a unique one. In Tails, it spoofs the MAC address, so you'll have a different MAC address each time, so it's hard to trace.
Thank you, Charlie. That was good. Was it called Medium Access Control? No.
There's a question about MAC addresses. I never quite got this part. Do they attach the packets which transmit from out of your local router? Potentially, can any person monitoring your traffic stream read your MAC address? So it's stripped out at your router.
They'll be able to find out the MAC address of the router you're using.
The usual way of doing it is by asking your browser in JavaScript to tell it what the MAC address is. That's the easiest way of finding someone's MAC address. If they've got JavaScript switched on, you can ask the browser and it'll check.
Which is an amusing way of getting around 30-minute free internet. You just look at the browser string, make up your own MAC address, and get another 30 minutes. It's a handy household tip.
So the nice thing about Tails is, you don't have to be too techy to try and work out how to use it. If you get it up and running, and they've got fairly good instructions on their website, and I can show anyone how to do that. You've got a fairly good bit of anonymised. You're doing well to have got that, really, I think. So, so that's it. That's about tools. I just want to look at activist hosting, because I know some people here do run activist hosting providers. So I'm just kind of widening this discussion beyond the tools that we were just looking at. So I'll put down some ideas. On the left we have some thoughts I had about commercial providers, and on the right, activist providers.
The activist one will be on the left.
Yes, good point, but it's not.
I'm taking my feet from you.
I know you are. Hecklers. Okay. So the main difficulty is, and I sort of face this providing these services and also using these services, is of course big commercial providers have got lots of resources, so they have lots of servers and lots of bandwidth, and which bandwidth is like how much amount of traffic you can send over the internet, and so they're able to scale up your resources. So if your site's suddenly really, really, really popular because it went viral, they're able to scale that up for you. So with activist resources, generally they're sort of smaller run things. There isn't the money there generally, because there isn't a lot of money coming into them always. There isn't the money there to just add a load more servers. And that's sort of limiting. And that limits the ability to upgrade. So I'm involved in Network 23, and we'd be thinking about how to get a better server, but it costs money, I mean, if we got a nice bit of server, it might cost us several £1,000s, and it's going to take time to set up, and so it's kind of hard to do that. One thing I also find sometimes is activist services sometimes have sort of web addresses that, some projects find it a bit, I don't really want to kind of to associate I don't want to kind of ActiveX or Rise Up mailing list or something like that. So it kind of seems a bit kind of spiky for me. What does that mean? And so I've had that really with projects where I put them on it and they're like a bit like, ooh, what's going on here? And also people don't necessarily know them so well as well. I mean, yes, they're well known amongst other activists. Everyone knows what Rise Up is, but on a wider population, they don't. And so I think there's a bit of familiarity and trust there that can cause a problem. Again, it's like any large company's got a lot of support. So they, whether it's paid or not, there's generally people there to support the systems, keep them up and running, answer problems. Again, when you've got a small number of people running something, you have they're probably down the pub or something. They're not necessarily, if you've got the whole crew down the pub or at Barncamp or something, they're not necessarily going to be able to give you the support you need. Those are kind of negative things about it because it's to do with the scalability and the investment. The benefits is that nearly all of the activist providers I know don't log data, your requests, and try and protect that privacy. So it's, that's a lot to do with actually not having the data in the first place to hand over. If you don't have any data about what people have been doing, then you've got nothing to hand over if people demand it. They generally resist cooperating with the authorities. I guess ultimately people probably are going to have to, unless they want to go to prison or something, cooperate, but people do resist that. And obviously different groups have got different policies about how much resistance they do. The commercial companies, they're in the business of making money for their shareholders and that kind of thing. So any request by whatever their political agenda is, that's what they're interested in doing. So any request from a law enforcement agency for data or to shut a site down, and they'll just capitulate and do it because it's not in their interest to fight it. They're not there defending whatever the project is. And one of the benefits of the activist thing is they tend to defend it. So where you've got people, and they've got campaigns on WordPress.com, and it's some kind of corporate campaign, as soon as it's against BP or something, as soon as BP solicitor says, hang on a minute, we don't like that site, take it down, they'll just take it down. They're not bothered about defending that, whereas the activists will do something about it, will try and resist that as long as possible. Okay, so I've got some questions for anyone that runs an activist server. And why you might want to use it, really. So, what purpose does your site serve? And do you really need to host it on activist servers? It's a good question, really. It's like, what are you doing? Why do you need to use them? I mean, I think in a way we do have to use these resources because we got to support them. So the more people use them, the more well known they are. potentially the better fundraising those providers can be and the better services that they can provide. And it's also good to have a spread of sites. You don't just want you don't just want really punky groups on your server. You want a spread of things, so it's quite good to get your allotment association on it as well as other things. I think having a spread of services is a good thing. That means also, if you've got a spread of organisations, then it becomes more higher profile if someone tries to shut down the site because there's other organisations. If they just shut down, it's just affected a load of anarchists over here, then it doesn't bring that action of trying to censor people into a wider awareness. But there's some questions for us really. It's like, if you're providing these services, the questions I have is, do we have the resources to meet the user's expectations? So it's, basically, even if it's a free site, if that free site is running your campaign or it's running the event you're putting on next week, and even if you're not paying for it, if it goes down, then just as if you were paying for it, you've made someone reliant on that service, and you kind of need to provide that service somehow. So, that's a thought. It's not good. You can't say, oh, well, we're all down the pub, so it'll be up 2 days later, or we're just really busy, because that produces a negative outcome for people. We have all sorts of questions about, how we vet users. Can we trust the users? Can we trust ourselves? Can we trust the people in the collectives? Oh, it's a minefield, really. Can I trust myself? I don't know. So, just to kind of widen this back into the Panopticon sort of sphere. So the thing about the commercial providers, and when we're using commercial providers, we can see that, they're operating for profit. They're operating for their shareholders. They're not operating to protect and defend human rights and freedom of speech. Now, sometimes they are, because there's a state can be interested that there are dissidents against another state, and so they're interested in supporting them. So, for example, during the Iranian uprising, there was pressure from the US government on Twitter not to do a systems upgrade because Iranian tweeters were using it. So, there are state interests involved in that. One of the other issues is that the internet's becoming like increasingly a bigger haystack. So you can't find these small bits. You've got your campaign website or whatever, and it's hard to find. Most people aren't really looking at that kind of stuff. Most people are looking at Facebook status updates and kittens and playing videos about people playing Minecraft and stuff. I mean, because the internet is, as it's grown, maybe whereas sort of 10, 15 years ago, there was much less there, but now there's just like loads of it. This. Right, okay, so I'm going to skip a few slides because I'm trying to finish in 5 minutes. So, just looking at on a wider scale, the wider kind of global stage of all of this. So the states as players have got vested interest in both protecting the privacy of people who agree with them and doing something which is politically to their ends, whilst also being able to spy on people that don't agree with them. So you've got this whole situation where you've got different states around the world paying hackers to attack the systems of other states, whilst also throwing people, whilst also fighting to stop hackers from other states attacking their equipment. So you've got this double standard there, where you've got, at one point they're trying to protect the privacy, on the other side they're trying to monitor and limit the people that disagree with them. They want to further their own political goals. So the US wants to further its ideology into China, and China wants to do the same thing, or just maintain its ideology. There's increasingly just active cyber war where people from different countries are intentionally attacking systems of other countries to disrupt them, whilst at the same time, so we're kind of getting to a sort of Cold War scenario really with it, where there's just a battle of people trying to prevent their systems getting attacked or shut down by other states, whilst also actively spending a fortune doing the same thing to people they don't like. And that's kind of massive, because the amount of money they're spending, I don't know why I've got global thermonuclear war. I just thought I'd have something from war games, really. So it's more like globalised cyber warfare, really. There's this bigger stage. So we're talking about our privacy, and we're talking about being concerned about being monitored by states and the NSA and Edward Snowden and stuff. But then in the background, there's all these other players that are also involved in it. So we're on a stage with lots of people. So on the internet, I'm just saying, in this, there's states themselves. Yeah, there's the military. There are activists. There are kitten lovers. There are drug dealers, paedophiles, ISIS, hacktivists, banks, patriot hackers. You and me, we're all affected by being connected to the internet, basically, by having all of our devices. We put all of our hospitals, power stations, military complexes, social life. We put everything online, haven't we? We're just about to put our refrigerators online, And so we've sort of said, oh, this technology is brilliant, let's just plug it all in. And then it's like, oh, fuck, actually, ISIS can break into my refrigerator. I mean, and turn it off so all my pork pies go bad and that sort of thing, And that's a nightmare. It's like, is that what I wanted? Was that when I was a kid and I was excited about this brave new world I was always really into computers and the idea of the internet and everything. And then I think, oh shit, actually, what have we done? And what have we done? I mean,
3 minutes.
Okay, got 3 minutes. So what have we done? People are using weapons like Stuxnet, which is a worm that very clever. I think it was probably done by the Americans probably did it. I don't think they fessed up to it quite, but it would seem the investment. So they wrote this little bit of a worm is like a nasty little bit of computer software that spreads itself around and does nasty, nefarious things to other computers, that kind of thing. That's what it does. And so it attacked this thing called a Siemens WinCC PCS7 SCADA controller software, very, very specific thing, and attacked a certain cascade of centrifuges that were a certain size, and that there had to be 984 of them, which, funny enough, happens to be exactly what the Iranians use for their nuclear power stations. And so this thing spread around the internet, and it affected, thousands of computers all over the world. It even affected American computers. You can see up the top, affected all these different states. But it basically, caused Iran to have to shut down these nuclear reactors because they were overspinning and stuff. So, people, and that must have cost millions to write, and it was, it's a staggering piece of effectively cyber warfare, that weapon, that they developed. Chinese military sites in 2012 subject to 90,000 attacks from US sources. US Cybercom, which is the United States Cyber Command, had a budget of $1.1 trillion passed for it in January 2014. $1.1 trillion they're spending on cyber war in the States. And other states are doing a similar thing. Nashi in Russia, and then you've got the non-state actors, or patriot hackers and stuff, people that are just patriotic and they form groups and they'll just attack other interests. So there's 120,000 pro-Putin individuals formed a sort of take on anti-fatherland supporters to shut down those sites. So there's not even a state player. They're just not the state just ignores them and lets them get on with it because they're doing something in their favour. So they help to basically take Estonia offline for about 2 weeks, which is, you could argue, is an act of warfare, even though the Geneva Convention or whatever wouldn't say it was, but it's almost an act of warfare now. Again, the Blackhawk safety net site, again, which is people attacking non-government support, anti-government people. It's 170,000 members. You know, so we're talking about large numbers of people. These are just individuals getting together because they don't like an ideology and attacking things. So it's mental, really. So I think the best thing we could do is just stop fucking using technology and smash it up, really, to be honest. Because, not my MacBook, actually. Starting with somebody else's computer. But, you know, it just does my head in because it's so kind of scary and complex and there's so many people involved in it. I just think, yeah, smash up your computer, smash up your phone, get off the net. It's dangerous. That's it. Thanks. Got a question?
You're advocating that. Do you know any cases of people who've done it and really like the experience? To motivate us? Because, you know, you're...
Oh, okay. No, I don't have an example of anyone that's done it. Does anyone know anyone that just...
I know at least 2 people who quit Red Hat and bought a farm and just moved there. They seem quite happy.
Okay.
We haven't heard from them, so I guess they are.
They could be dead, though.